Mormon Stories podcast is a production of the Open Stories Foundation. All donations to Mormon Stories are fully tax deductible and go directly towards keeping the podcast alive and towards building a community of support for Mormons like you.
Come, come, ye saints, no toil nor labor fear, but with joy wend your way.
It's really good to have you all here. I understand there's a number of people that are paying attention from outside this location, and so welcome all of them as well. It's a unique evening, and incredibly grateful to have you all here. It's a remarkable collection of thought leaders and just unique, great personalities inside this bonded community. And it's a pleasure to know each of you. I'd like to, of course, welcome our guest, and of course his wife, Connie. Where's Connie? Oh, she's pretty close. Turns out she's right here to his left. I suspect most time to his right, though. She seems pretty sharp, and it's really nice to have you up here. Just with all of those that are here, I'd just like to call out what a unique evening it is to have Sandra with us as well. It would be too long and too distracting to go through all the different recognizable faces and voices from this really unique community. But most importantly, how about from the hearts of all those who are watching from outside and from everyone here? So many of us have gone, I guess, let me take that back. We all started in the same place. I don't know how we all got into that place. We all have our story, how we got into that world. But we all have a very common theme on how we have ended up here tonight. And the way our, the things that occupy our thoughts these days. But for many of us, for many of the authors that are in the room with us this evening, really grateful, thank you. For many of us, reading the words of Grant Palmer, were times when not just education, but changes, decisions and, new switches being turned. Reading the pages of his books and his research. And so for me, it's deeply personal because Holly and I went through our process inside the pages of Grant Palmer's words. So for everyone, why don't we welcome Grant Palmer. And of course, we have this evening the man that brought this all together for us, Mr. John DeLynn.
Thank you so much, Rick. And Holly, I just want to take a minute to just thank Rick and Holly for providing their beautiful home tonight to us for this special evening. Thanks to you both. Rick and Holly have been incredible supporters of the Open Stories Foundation over the past few years, but more importantly, they've been dear friends to me and Margie and to our family and to many of you. So thanks again. We love you guys. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Mormon Stories podcast. This is a live event. We haven't done a ton of these, but we're just so thrilled to have you all with us. It's February 15th, 2017. We're somewhere near Park City, Utah, and we're here to honor a really special person in so many of our lives. Such a special evening. So grateful that so many of you are here. We think there should be an event like this with thousands of people attending. But we wanted to keep it intimate in terms of sort of who's in the room tonight. But we're so glad and grateful for those of you who have joined us through Facebook Live. We're hoping that you will also enjoy the fact that we're able to live stream this. And we hope you'll have a robust conversation as well. I'll just say very briefly that this event is made possible by the Open Stories Foundation, by those who donate to it and support it. Many, if not all or most of you here are supporters. We just want to thank those of you who've made this possible tonight. There have been many people behind the scenes who have made this possible, including Amy Grubbs and Lisa and Shandy. They've been fabulous. And the Open Stories Board of Directors, and of course, all of you who support us. So I just had to just make sure we acknowledge that. And with that, we're ready to begin. And what I want to do tonight is start with the pop quiz. And we're going to see how good you guys do. You guys ready? You thought you were kind of done with school, but you're not. So for those of you who can't see, you're welcome to stand up and shift around. This will be a short part of the presentation, but if you don't want to miss out on the fun, you're welcome to stand up and shift around to look at the overhead. And Richard, do you know if the slides are in the shot? Just want to make sure that the viewing audience, you guys can actually post comments as well and take part in this quiz. So what I'm going to do is show you some photos tonight, and I'm going to ask you to tell me if you recognize who the people are. And then you have to keep a tally of how many you knew, and we'll see who gets 100. Is that all right? Is that too much pressure? Are you guys stressed out? Did I stress you out? Okay, don't shout it out. I'll tell you when to shout it out, all right? We'll give people time to guess. All right, here we go. It's time for a pop quiz. Richard, we get on the video? All right, ready for a pop quiz. Those of you watching live can comment on the stream. Who's that? Don't answer yet. Give you a chance to think about it. All right, shout it out. B.H. Roberts is the correct answer. All right, 1 point if you got B.H. Roberts. All right? Okay, let's go for the second one. You guys ready? Who's that? Wait, think about it. All right, what's the answer? What? Juanita Brooks. What's that? Juanita Brooks is the answer. All right, here's the next one. Don't answer. Think about it. Who's that? Fawn McKay Brody, author of No Man Knows My History. Juanita Brooks, author of Mountain Meadows Massacre. B.H. Roberts, what did he do? General Authority of the Church, a mountain of scholarly work, very important in helping us understand a little bit more about the Book of Mormon and what it is and what it isn't, let's just say. B.H. Roberts, Juanita Brooks, Fawn Brody. All right, who's next? Think about it. Don't answer. Some of you may have known this guy. Who is it? Leonard Arrington. What was his role? Church historian for 10-ish years, right? Camelot years of church history. Okay? All right. Next one. Think about it. Don't answer. All right. Who's that? Gerald and Sandra Tanner, founders of the Utah Lighthouse Ministry. Sandra's right there in the back. You want to give Sandra a round of applause? She's here with us tonight. Sandra is a pioneer in helping us all see the church a little more clearly. Her and her late husband Gerald. Also been on Mormon Stories podcast, one of our favorite episodes. All right, next photo. You guys ready? Okay, this is going to be, some of you won't know this. Some of you won't know. All right, answer. Who is it? Michael Marquardt. He's also here, right here in the back. When Grant brought Michael, when Grant introduced Michael to me, he said, my work would not have been possible without Michael. See how that works? From Grant Palmer to Fawn Brody to Juanita Brooks to Leonard Arrington to Sandra and Gerald Tanner to Michael Marquardt. Let's keep going. That's a great photo, by the way. Really nice photo. All right, think about it. Think about it. This one's going to get a little easier. Who's that? Michael Quinn, D. Michael Quinn, brought on by Leonard Arrington into the church history department, right? So much of what we know and think now comes from his work, especially the origins of power and extensions of power, along with Mormonism and the early magic worldview. Very important works. Also, so much to mention. All right, here's another one. Think about it. Think about it. Don't answer. Who's that? Maxine Hanks. Did you guys know that? Maxine's here. Wave, Maxine. Maxine's here in the back. Maxine is one of the September 6, one of the 6 people excommunicated for publishing factual church history. She published a book or a collection of essays on women and the priesthood and authority that stands as a seminal work in Mormon history, and we're really glad you're joining us, Maxine, and we honor you and your contributions. You love Grant? You're here for Grant. All right, who's that? Who's that with the biceps that are so big? He's got scars because his biceps are bulging out of his skin. Who's that? Everybody? Brett Metcalf. He's not with us, but he sends his love. He's been interviewed on Mormon Stories. He's been a very important scholar. He hot tubbed with Mark Hoffman, and he's been a really important scholar on many things, but particularly on what? What book? Book of Abraham, right? All right. Who's that guy? Whoa. All right. Now we got the millennials clapping. What's that? The scouting? Mockingbird? Mockingjay? Who's that? Jeremy Runnels, author of CES Letter, right? All right. Jeremy's been a super important force in modern Mormonism. Who's that? Who's that? Say it loudly. Where's Lindsay? Did she bail? Did she bail? All right, well, Lindsay missed out, but Lindsay Henson Park is a very important modern-day historian of a different type, but her podcast, Year of Polygamy, has made a really important contribution. Would you all agree? Plus her work with Sunstone. Who am I forgetting? Shout out some names. Who? Devery Anderson. Yep, he's done important work on the temple and supporting dialogue. Yep, and his work on Emmett Till. Who else? Who? Dan Vogel. We'll hear from him later. Greg Prince. Lots of people who have all been a part. And why am I mentioning all these names? What do all these people have in common? Here's what I wanted to say. This is my little tribute. All of these people worked very meticulously to gather evidence regarding LDS church history. They all showed great courage to publish their findings, pretty much all of them at a great personal cost. They were all punished or marginalized by the institutional Mormon church in some way for their honesty, for their courage, for their integrity. And for those of us who consider ourselves to be in a good place, either within the church or outside the church, we owe them, and people like them, a massive debt of gratitude. because they helped us see the church and reality more clearly than we would have. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Pat. Thank you. But that'd be kind of lame to put my own face up there, right? I can't. And the image that one of the things I'm trying to really grow, one of the ways I'm trying to grow is that in spite of feeling hurt or disappointed by the church, I want to grow to the point where I can be gracious and lovely to everyone on the spectrum, from the non-believing all the way through to the most orthodox and believing. And so it's tough to find a metaphor that isn't sort of talking down or degrading. The revelation that came to me the other night was sort of like some people may be on a train in a seatbelt, and that may be exactly where they want to be, where they're most comfortable and where they're most happy. But if you put a bird in that seatbelt on that train, it may be a very different experience for that bird. And so not all of us are passengers on a train who want to be comfortably seatbelted in. Many of us are birds who want to fly. And what I want to say is that why we're here to honor Grant tonight, and why we're here and also symbolically to honor so many people, is because what I think your greatest contribution is that for those of us who want to be birds and who want to fly, you helped cut the chain or the seatbelt or the tether to allow us to be and go exactly where we want to be and go and to do. And that's why when Grant, heard that you were struggling in your health, I remembered back to the days in Seattle where I was going through my own crisis and how much your book, An Insider's View of Mormon Origins, was influential to me. And so many of us today stand on your shoulders. So we've already thanked him once, but I just want to close my little memorial and thank you one more time, Grant, personally, for what you've meant to me and to so many of us. So let's give Grant one more round of applause. All right. So this evening's going to be sort of two more parts. What we're going to do is we're going to do an interview where I interview Grant. Should I shut the projector off now? Would that be better for the... So what we're going to do now is we're going to... I'm going to interview Grant, and we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about An Insider's View of Mormon Origins a little bit of reflections on that. We're going to talk about his new book, which he's going to be coming out with soon. And we're going to be talking sort of about final, reflections for the evening on whatever he wants to share with us about his life and about the future, etc. So that's going to be a three-part interview. And then what we're going to have to do at the end, because we're, either Mormons or post-Mormons, we're going to have a little testimony meeting, and we're going to take turns. Some of us are going to come up, be really brief, and share with Grant just a little bit of appreciation, kind of one by one. And we can't go forever, and we'll have to keep it brief, but we're going to give time for at least a handful of you to come up and thank Grant yourselves for what he's done. Does that sound all right? All right. Now, if I sit down, does that mean are you guys going to hate that? You guys okay? If any of you need to shift your chairs around to see better, you could also pull out your iPhones and watch the stream. But is this going to be okay? Are you all right? Okay, all right. So Lloyd's got his phone working. Okay. All right, Grant. So most of us are here. Because of your book, An Insider's View of Mormon Origins. We can obviously refer our listeners to that book and to the multi-hour interview that we did on that. Is it episodes, 30 through 32? Is that right? On Mormon Stories? There's 4 of them, yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but let's just talk briefly about it. Tell us why you wrote An Insider's View of Mormon Origins.
Is this on? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I suppose there's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is when I was doing my PhD work at BYU, I'd read all these dissertations and theses, and I thought, a lot of this stuff isn't known in the Mormon Sunday school. And so I thought, I think there's a niche to write a book as a school teacher, put 50 pictures, 50 plus pictures in there, and try to write it for not a professional audience, but just those who had an interest in Mormon history. So that was one of the reasons I wrote it. I thought it would fill a niche. I think Signature Books thought it would sell well to college students, but it turned out to sell well to all audiences, and I've been very grateful for that. Another influence is when I was doing PhD work, I had 4 areas of emphasis, and one of them was the Enlightenment, the Second Great Awakening. And as I started to see that all of those sermons of the Great Awakening that Joseph Smith would have been very familiar with were very, very familiar to what preachers were teaching in that era. And it's practically the same thing as you find between King Benjamin and Alma II in the Book of Mormon. That's 11 or 12 preachers. And so I thought, this is not a coincidence. And then one other thing. The Insider's View is the first half is basically the Book of Mormon. The last 4 chapters of the 8 is the 4 foundational visions of the church. And I found they had a pattern, in especially the angel gold plate story, the priesthood restoration, and the first vision. They all started out kind of mundane and not too spiritual, and with each telling, they became more unique and material, physical, and yes, miraculous. And I thought, if it had only been one of them, there may not have been an Insider's View. But the fact that there were 3 of the 4 foundational visions, the 4th being the witnesses, and there's a little bit of evolution in that one as well. But those last 3, I thought, this is a problem. So I would say those are 3 influences.
When you were writing the manuscript and when you contemplated actually publishing it, what was your intent or hope? What impact did you think it might have, or did you want it to have?
Well, I thought I might get in trouble, and I did. But I'm a colonial historian. This is colonial material, and I was asked this question at my High Council court, and I says, well, it's kind of like Sir Edmund Hillary. I did it because it was there. He climbed Mount Everest, and it was within my bailiwick and within my purview of interest and scholarship, and so I wrote it. I was quite naive. I thought everyone would be interested in the truth. Boy, was I wrong about that.
But you must have known that it had the potential to be highly disruptive to both people's faith and also to the church.
Well, I did, and that's why I wanted the incomparable Jesus to be part of the first book, Insider. Signature did not want to do that, and I'm glad they didn't, because because the incomparable Jesus is a better book, because I waited 2 years to research and publish that one. But I didn't want to leave people high and dry, and yet I knew it would in some cases. That's why I wanted the Jesus book. I wanted to give them a direction. But as you know, so many people, they find out Mormonism isn't true, and that's the end of religion.
But when you send a book like that out, first of all, did you have an idea that it would impact the church the way that it has? And
No.
how did you want the church to be impacted by the book?
Well, like I said, I just thought everybody'd welcome the truth, but...
Meaning they would just all admit that it wasn't true and go home?
Well, they at least consider what I'd written, and and go from there. But of course, they don't do it that way. I mean, my church court, 15, 18 high counselors, and one of them had read the book, and he was appointed to be on the church's side for the, So I don't know what you do. I mean, they didn't read it. I don't think they wanted to read it. They weren't interested in read it. They just said at the court that I had damaged some people's faith. That was it. I think Jeremy got the same routine. And that's how they do it. They're really not interested in the truth.
Did you want the church to go away? Did you want the church to be more honest, to change? What did you want to happen to the church itself? Or did you not think about that?
No, I wanted them to make some changes. I only had out of a 6-hour court, I had 15 minutes.
But I'm talking about why the book, not the court. Oh. Why the book? What did you want to happen as a result?
I'd like to see some changes and some honesty, yes.
See the church become more honest. Yeah. But did you want them to, okay, the Book of Mormon isn't historical, and okay, the church isn't true. Did you want that type of admission? Was that in your purview of what might happen?
I really didn't know. I just wrote the book. I didn't know how successful it was going to be. I just wrote it because I felt like I had to.
So not a ton of thought about its impact, more you felt like you needed to write it.
No, and yet I thought there'd be some problems.
Okay. What has been the hardest part about publishing the book for you?
I think some of the reactions of my family, but we have a lot of political and religious differences among my 4 children. But I can honestly say we have transcended that with love, and we're quite close, and I'm very appreciative of that. Not all families have that kind of outcome, but we do, and I'm very happy to report that.
Do you want to tell us who's here tonight, or would you rather not? And hold the mic right to your mouth if you don't mind.
My one son, Rhett, and his wife, Lisa, are here. And then another son, David, and his wife, Jenny, are here. So I'm happy to have them here.
And your sweetheart?
And Connie.
Can we give them a round of applause, everybody? I can say on behalf of my wife, Margie, that having a close member of the family becomes such a public figure in a polarizing and not always a pleasing way can be very traumatic and distressful, and stressful for the family. And it's not a trivial thing. It's not something anyone really asks for, especially because most people are private. So I think it's just important that we honor you and thank you. Even if you didn't want to be part of it, you were part of it. And I imagine it's been bumpy and difficult at times. So thank you for your sacrifices. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I warned Connie 24 years ago that this might happen with my book, and it happened.
So what's the positive response been to your book?
Overwhelming.
When people are grateful, what do they say?
Oh, you'll hear them when they speak. It's pretty much follows that line. But I always liked that Beatle song where they said they got along with a little help from their friends. And I feel that way about you guys and a lot of others. And I thought maybe, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of friends, but maybe it's more like thousands, and that's a real shockaroo.
So you've been grateful for the friendships.
Yes. And I haven't had too many really negative people come after me. I mean, I get them, but it's overwhelmingly positive. It really is. So it's fortunately very lopsided in a favorable way.
That's been my experience too. What is it like to be viewed by a large chunk of other people as the Antichrist, as Korihor, as an evil person? Has that Does that ever hit you? Has that ever sunk in? Does that ever occur to you? And if so, what's that like for you and how do you deal with that?
Well, I don't view myself as a core whore or anything like it because
some say core whore is not a pejorative, actually. Some say it's a title to wear with honor.
I consider myself a Christian, a believing Christian. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But it's interesting, my stake president, who's Harvard educated, he says, now I want you to go through the scriptures and find all the antichrists and to see where you slipped up. And I did that. And I came back and I says, I don't identify with any of them, sorry.
But still, you have to walk around town knowing that there's people who see you and think that you have harmed others. Have you stopped to think about that, and how do you process that?
They don't say anything. The people that are favorable speak to me.
So
I never had anyone come up and say, you destroyed this in my family and so forth. Not really. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, but you probably know that some still think it.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you process
in my own family?
How do you process that?
I think the evidence is so overwhelming about that Mormonism is not what it claims to be that I figure that they're the ones that are going to have to make the adjustments, not me.
I had a really great question from a listener. They wrote, describe your lowest point and then how you bounced back from your lowest point.
I think my lowest point was in the court, and I don't want to get into this because we've moved past this as a family, but they asked my son-in-law to write and stand in front of me and read that I had denied Christ and stuff like that. And that hurt. And the bishop who was with me at the time, he says, that young man is on shakier ground than he sounds like. And I appreciated the bishop's comment. I confronted him about it, and he denied it, but the stake president wanted. They like to use the family to drive a wedge to get you to do their bidding or give it up or what. But that was a very low, unexpected blow to me. But like I said, we're past that, and I'm grateful that we really are past that. So I don't want to dwell on that, but that one really hurt at the time.
How did you bounce back from that?
I've always had the gift of forgiving people rather quickly and readily, and I'm glad I have that gift.
I imagine your faith in Christ is a model for that?
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing to do in Christianity is forgiveness, and yet when you can do it. I counseled inmates for 13 years, and those who healed the best and the fastest were those who forgave those who had done harm to them. Boy, some of them held tremendous grudges. Have some real stories about that.
But maybe your advice is when you can forgive, it'll be better for you.
Yeah, it's for you. It's for your healing more than anyone.
Love it. Do you have a sense for what the impact of your book has been on the church? There's so many. I mean, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Some say that you didn't do much original research, some like to dismiss Insider's View as just a compilation of, No Man Knows My History and work gone before. I'm not really trying to pin that on you, but at the same time, we're all here, and all of us that are trying to make a difference sort of look to you as someone who's been a major influencer. Do you have any way to assess what impact your book has had on the church in the modern day?
I like some of the things you said, and I don't know if they're true or not. I know the one about Mormon Think is true. The founder of Mormon Think called me and says, I've read your book and I want to give something back to this community. And so he started Mormon Think. And at one time, they were getting 2 to 3 million hits per month. So it has had quite an impact. And as you know, Mormon Think has the critical and has the apologetics. He says, I spent almost all my time looking for good apologist arguments, and I couldn't hardly find any. But I like what the other things you said. They may be true, I don't know.
When the essays, for example, when the essays are published, do you kind of think that maybe, do you kind of go, maybe something that I did helped influence that?
Well, I think a lot of historians caused that moment to happen. I may have been one of them, yeah.
I kind of think so too. So someone asked, what benefits do you see from the internet or social media age that you wish were available when you went through your own discovering the church's truth back in the 80s and 90s?
Well, the internet popularizes everything, doesn't it? It makes things known. It's things that the church thought were nailed down. None of it's nailed down. It's all there at the press of a button. And this has been a good thing for humanity on the whole. Yeah. I did my research the old-fashioned way. There's no internet. I won't say more about that, but one of the giants' shoulders I stood on is here tonight. That's Michael Marquardt. He's the Dale Morgan of our era. And he relentlessly shared his material with me, and it made my book a better book. No, there's not a lot of original research in my book. There is some, and there's some creative angles, but what was I going to say? There's some creative angles, but like I said at the onset of the program, I just thought we need to get this material out to the people. This is before the internet, right at the beginning of the internet. And the internet has done nothing but promote it and expand it and advertise it and everything else.
Sure. Talk about your decision to resign from the church and how that's been for you since you made that decision. Why did you make that decision, and how's that been for you?
Well, I wrote an obscure article called Religious Feeling and Truth in a
I guess we should say that the verdict of your original disciplinary council was?
Disfellowshipment.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how many years later?
7 or 8.
Okay, now finish your story. Sorry.
Now it's 2010. I wrote an obscure article in a Baptist seminary magazine back in Kansas City, Missouri, called Religious Feeling and Truth. Religious Feeling and Truth. And it will be one of the 20 chapters in my new book, which is titled Restoring Christ, Giving Up Mormon Jesus for Biblical, or for Gospels Jesus. And that'll be one of the essays in there. And lo and behold, my stake president shows up on my doorstep. Now, this man has no academic credentials or interest. He sells pots and pans and dry goods to Rite Aid. But here he is, and I think he got the article from Strengthening the Church Committee, or whatever it's called now. And he proceeded to tell me this was all false and that we're going to hold a court on you. And I says, well, I don't want to go through another 6-hour court. And he says, oh, this one won't be 6 hours. And he kept saying he must hold a court on me, which means he got his directions from that way instead of that way. And so I finally asked the right question. What do I need to do to just be a roll pad member on the church? And he had written me a letter saying I had to repudiate every chapter of my book and regain my testimony. And I thought, now the bishop was with him. I like this bishop. He thought I had a 50% chance of survival. And after that, he says, you have no chance. And I thought I had a 25% chance of survival. So I I submitted my resignation to be proactive because sometimes people talk, the church says, well, we can't talk about why he was disciplined and all that. And so I decided to go proactive and resign, which I did in 2010. And I have had no regrets whatsoever about that.
Was there a part of you that was sad? There
would have been if they would have excommunicated me in 2002, because I was still, still more of a believer. But by 2010 and all the water that had gone under the bridge, I'd say no.
Many people have asked, with reference to your book, would you have done anything differently? Looking back, do you have any regrets, or would you have maybe done some things differently in how you handled that whole thing up until your resignation?
I'm not sure what you mean by that last statement, but as for the book, I wouldn't change much in the book, if anything. I probably would put another chapter on the influence of anti-Masonic rites, ritual, and so forth. But at the time, it was so up in the air, I wasn't sure. Anyway, I left that book out. If I did it again, I'd probably have one more chapter on that. What was the last? I didn't understand that.
Just any other regrets or things you would have done differently, not just with the book, but with how things have been since releasing the book?
Well, that's why I have a second chance in this new title, which I submitted to Signature Books January 10th, and they're slow enough that I probably won't be around to publish it, should they decide to publish it. They haven't said they will. But it's given me a chance to write 10 chapters that is extended, but in the same genre as Insider, and 10 chapters that have been written beyond the incomparable Jesus, although these 10 chapters are more academic, not so devotional. So those who want to get the answer to that, I guess, can pick that book up sometime.
All right. Ever the scholar, in terms of family or community or friendships or any other non-scholarly ways, any regrets?
No, I don't think so. I think I think I'd do it again.
All right, excellent. Okay, so that's the first part of the interview. Now we're going to the second. The second part is around your new book. Now I have the title here, Restoring Christ, Writings on Christianity and Mormonism, but you had a little bit more lengthy of a title.
Yeah, a little catchier title.
Say it one more time.
A little catchier title than the one you just read.
No, repeat the title. You're...
Restoring Christ, Giving a Mormon Jesus for Gospels Jesus. And I have several chapters in there where I compare the Mormon Jesus with the four Gospels Jesus. And I found I don't really like the Mormon Jesus very much.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I've got a chapter in there. It was very therapeutic of me to compare the two and see the difference. We're not just dealing with Joseph Smith here, but Joseph Smith's Jesus, and it's turned out to be a rather cathartic experience for me to make that comparison. I have one chapter in the book's called Two Different Jesuses, and I could just rattle off 5 or 6 themes that are on that without getting into any details, but
just give us a sense for the difference between the Gospels Jesus.
That's what I'm going to do. The Gospels Jesus is more invitational. He's not as autocratic when talking to believers. The Gospels Jesus allows more freedom. Mormon Jesus he's got prescriptions for every orifice of the body from head to foot. the Mormon Jesus is very, he likes to initiate the carnage in 3 Nephi 9. You don't find that in Matthew 25, and there's more to understanding that than I'm speaking, but we really have never talked about how the Old Testament was put together, and that helps you understand that the Deuteronomous God of the Old Testament prevailed. It was kind of like having Boyd K. Packer write the Old Testament. And we had different points of view, but they just didn't get in. Okay? That's a very simple explanation of a complicated subject. But it's important that the Mormon Jesus initiates the carnage, and he is a Deuteronomous God of the Old Testament. I would also say that the Gospels Jesus has a much easier way to get to live in the city of God with him and his Father. The Mormon Jesus has far more requirements, including marriage, and there is no requirement of marriage in the Hebrew Bible, in the New Testament, or the Book of Mormon. It's only Joseph Smith in 132, and then he says you must be a polygamist to get into the top tier. Not so with Jesus in the four Gospels. There are other things. The doctrinal emphasis. Jesus he's really telling his disciple, I'm not going to be here very long. Pay close attention. 36 times he says, pay attention to me, follow me, look to me, so forth. The Mormon Jesus wants you to focus on his church and his prophet, and if there's a difference, you go with the prophet, not Jesus. That's a very important one, but it doesn't sound like it on the surface. There are all kinds of things. Jesus says, he tells his church, when you give your alms, money, whatever, don't broadcast it, don't advertise it. Mormons have a title settlement. The Mormon Jesus requires a tithing settlement. You've got to step up to the plate and declare. Same with humanitarian aid. They, in recent years, have been taking reporters along, journalists. This is not the Jesus of the four Gospels. And I think another very important one is that the Mormon Jesus has a tendency to exclude certain groups, and the Jesus of the Gospel is far more inclusive. And let me just say one thing about that. Look, Jesus' apostles were very biased. They didn't like Samaritans, and they didn't like Gentiles. And Jesus tells them, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. They did so. In Acts 8, there's Philip teaching the Samaritans. He didn't like them. In Acts 10, there's Peter. Cornelius, the Gentile, comes to him, and Peter's seen unclean things in a sheet, and Cornelius knocks on his door, and Peter connects the dots that he's to give the gospel to the Gentiles. And Peter's astonished. He says, I didn't know God was no respecter of person. So they took the gospel to the world. The Mormon Jesus, he gets around to the blacks in 1978, and now they don't like the gays very much. So it reflects the personality of the Mormon Jesus. He's reluctant, he's tardy, he's slow. And you add all this up and you have two different Jesuses, and they're quite different. And to me, the nature of the biblical gospel Jesus is a more loving being. That's enough.
Beautiful. Why did you pick this book as your final book? You alluded to that previously, but just say it, like, why this book? Why a book on Jesus? You've done the incomparable Jesus. Why have you picked this book as your...
Well, these are just essays that go beyond the incomparable Jesus and go beyond Insider's View. What did I say, by the way?
What did you say when?
When I had alluded to...
Oh, just that you wanted to give people a direction, kind of something to move towards.
Well, I didn't want to leave them hanging, and that doesn't mean they're going to do what I say. I mean, there's a lot... Look, what does a person do after the narrative of their life has fallen apart? Everybody in this room practically is identified with that. There are many ways to go. I kind of like the way the Community of Christ, our LDS Church, is done it. When Wallace B. Smith was asked in 68, they were on just the beginning. Their scholars and their leadership discovered that Mormonism wasn't what it claimed to be, and they were way ahead of us in the LDS Church. He said this, and it's turned out to be a very important watershed experience. He was asked, what do you do if there's a contradiction between Jesus and Joseph? What do you do if there's differences? And he said, we'd have to go with Jesus. And it seemed kind of innocent at the time, but it's proven to be very important. They've put Jesus Christ first, and everything else that's problematic is washed into the background. I admire them for that. They did not, they took Joseph Smith on head on. They didn't paper over it. They lost a lot of members, but now they have stabilized and are slightly growing once again. And I admire them for that, and I think that's a model that the LDS Church should follow, but it looks to me like they're doubling down and putting out half-truth essays and, trying to educate the younger generation with a new agenda and a new tradition.
As you know, secularism is growing, and our research shows that over half of those who kind of lose faith in Mormonism become either atheist or agnostic.
Yeah.
So I think there's many of your fans who would have liked to see you kind of follow that path, just because we tend to project as humans and want everyone to arrive at the brilliant conclusions we arrive at as individuals. But just briefly, your book is really interesting. Part of what it does is it tries to address some of the concerns about did Jesus really exist and why people should give Jesus a chance. And let me just ask you really just a few of those points. We'll cover just some of the points in some of the chapters. First and foremost, why are you fighting for belief? Why do you want to encourage people to believe in Jesus? It may be obvious, but I'd just like to hear your answer to that.
Because I think he's real, and I have a relationship with him, and people can say it's pie in the sky, but to me, his promises are true, that he gives, my peace I leave with you, my spirit will bring things to you, remember, I will manifest myself in your life, this kind of thing. But I did want to write something for somewhere for people to go. But you almost have to give up the Mormon Jesus to see the real Jesus.
What would you say your faith in Jesus is based on now?
Oh, that's a good one, especially since I'm staring my mortality in its face. I always like that joke by the comedian W.C. Field. He says, this life is so difficult, it's a wonder anyone gets out of it alive. There's several things. Look, I have a degree in philosophy, and I can argue with the best of them. Agnostics, my agnostic atheist friends, fine. Some of them are agnostic theists, meaning they don't know, but they believe there's a God, and some are agnostic atheists, meaning they believe there isn't a God. Some of them believe that when you die, it all goes dark, but they hope that there's consciousness on the other side. And to be bare bones honest, that is the truth. We don't know. Not really. So why do I believe that there will be another world? I found Jesus Christ to be satisfying enough in my life. I've had a lot of dreams and experiences. I've had one experience that was live and in color, and it wasn't a dream. And to me, it was stronger than sight. It's in the Incomparable Jesus for those who want to see it. And I remember telling an atheist about this dream in detail, or this live experience in detail. And he said to me, he says, I'd hold on to that if I were you. And I have. And I can't explain that one away. I can explain all the dreams, Freud and all of that, but I cannot and will not explain this one experience. I hope Werner von Braun is right, this rocket scientist. Nothing disappears without a trace. I hope to survive. From a science point of view, the miracle of personality is just, what a waste if it all ends. What a waste. So there's different aspects that I argue and think and so forth. But there's just a part of me that just assumes that I'm going to carry on, and I can't get rid of it. Maybe it's something I was raised with. I don't know. But I do believe in a next world.
If you can hold the mic right up to your mouth. I mean, not that close, but just point it towards your mouth instead of, just for the audience. If somebody were to say to you, Grant, okay, so your testimony is based on faith and probably feelings you've had, and that's probably how believing Mormons, believing Muslims base their faith as well. How do you reconcile, your differing beliefs from theirs if they're sort of claiming the same basis for belief?
Well, this one experience goes beyond what most Mormons have experienced, number one. But yes, what about the Buddhists and the Muslims and the so forth and so on? And
there are Mormons with strong spiritual experiences.
If you look at what Jesus is saying, he says, take upon yourself my character. And you find those characteristics in almost all the major religions. Now, this is Grant Palmer speaking, because the New Testament doesn't say what I'm about to say. I think he's going to be generous with them. But I don't know that. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Sandra might have a much stronger point of view in a little different direction, but I think he really is God, but I think he's going to be generous for those who have taken upon themselves, his character and nature. That's just a personal belief of mine.
And other people's faith that differs from yours, how do you square those?
Same thing. He's always generous. He talked to everyone. I can't see him getting hard-nosed. Although there are scriptures in the New Testament that don't sound so good about unbelievers.
You're saying God will be generous to everyone.
That's what I'm hoping.
But how do you reconcile the fact that you're basing your beliefs on the same method that others base theirs, but yours are different? How do you know yours are reliable?
Well, ultimately you don't. You don't know for sure. I'm just saying I've had one experience that went way beyond what most religious people would have with feelings and that kind of thing. And so that's one aspect of it. I'd hate to see human personality disappear. It seems like such a miracle to me. All the characters in this, I don't know, it just seems like a waste of time otherwise.
Beautiful. Thank you. Real quickly, there are people who like to say that the historical Jesus never existed. You write a chapter on that. Do you want to just talk briefly about people who would say Jesus didn't even really exist, let alone resurrect?
Well, there's hardly any scholars who believe that. This is internet people largely. But when Paul converts, we know Paul converted just a few years after Jesus' resurrection, and I won't go into why we know that, but we know that. It's in the chapter. He says he goes into the desert for 3 years. He doesn't talk to anyone. And then he comes down to Jerusalem, and who does he talk to? Peter, who knew Jesus better than anyone, and James, the brother of the Lord. That's as close to an eyewitness as you're going to get. If James doesn't know that Jesus was his brother and lived, nobody knows that Jesus lived, in my opinion. There are other reasons, but it's mainly internal. We don't have a lot of external pieces of evidence that Jesus was a historical person. Tacitus is probably the best. He wrote around, he was a Roman senator, a Roman historian, and he clearly talks about Christus and how he received the ultimate punishment by one of our prosecutors, Pontius Pilate, during the reign of Tiberius, and all that fits. But there's not a lot of good statements externally to that. Josephus has been tampered with, in my view, and others are a little weaker, but it's the internal evidence that convinced me that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person.
Internal evidence meaning?
Within the New Testament itself.
Okay. If somebody were to express concern that the Gospels, many of them weren't written until generations, actually written down until generations after Jesus' death, and were passed down through oral tradition, so how reliable can they be? What would you say to that?
Well, the argument is that they didn't write anything down until they were written in, 70 to 95 AD, and so you know how oral tradition is, you can't rely on it. And besides, they're written in polished Greek, and the disciples didn't know Greek, which is true. It says they were uneducated, I think in Acts, and so forth and so on. So they like to conclude, the deniers, that there is no, we can't rely on the four Gospels. Look at the very first word of Luke. Now, Luke was a missionary companion to Paul, and he did know Greek, and he wrote some things down, but he didn't write the book of Luke. Matthew didn't write the book of Matthew. Mark didn't write the Gospel of Matthew, and John didn't write the Gospel of John. Does that mean they're...
And you can see why that's troubling to people, right?
You can, but you have two sources that are good. First, you have Luke saying, look, I examined everything closely, and the eyewitnesses, meaning the 12 apostles and others, a few others, they talked about this to the early Christian community. And Mark wrote down Peter's testimony, his memoirs. We should call Mark Peter's memoirs. Mark spoke Greek, and he wrote up his gospel. And Luke didn't like it. He says, I've read the gospel of Luke, or Mark, and it's good, but it's not in an orderly way. Peter would tell the Corinthians or the Romans, he would tell them just incidents and apply it to the current situation, but it wasn't orderly. So Mark wrote up his gospel, and then Luke wrote up his gospel, and then Matthew wrote up his gospel. Now Matthew, he could read and write. He was a tax collector for Rome, and he wrote his in Aramaic, according to an early disciple named Papias. Papias didn't know the apostles, but he knew the disciples of the apostle. And he's writing around 65, 78, 65 AD. And he clearly writes in his writings that Mark wrote these things down, and they were circulated among the earliest Christians. And Matthew wrote these things down. He was an apostle. And they circulated among the early Christians. So there was written material early on. But they didn't write the finished four Gospels. This came later, and whoever wrote Mark honored Mark for what he had done earlier. And the same with Matthew, and the same with Luke, and the same with John. So the deniers that they're not representing things realistically, I don't think, of how it happened. It makes it look like nothing was written down until these finished gospel writers, whoever they were, they're unknown, wrote, that is not the way we got the New Testament Gospels.
When some express concern about the first vision, Joseph Smith's first vision, because it changes over time and becomes a little bit more fantastical, I've maybe heard some express the same concern about the New Testament, that if you line them up chronologically, the early, sort of, let's just say the early Gospels, Jesus is just a really important prophet, a wise man, but that as the story advances in chronology to the gospel that's written last, then he's becoming the Son of God and resurrected and those sorts of things. I'm sure you're familiar with those criticisms. Is that a fair expression of concern about the New Testament Gospels?
I don't think so.
Have you heard that? Is that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. And it'd take some time to explain that, and I don't think we have that time tonight. John, the Gospel of John, they don't even think, it wasn't written by John, it was written by some other, they honored John, but 93% of his Gospel is different than the first three synoptics, they call them. I was going to say something else, but
just in terms of the story, some say the story grows more fantastical with the chronology. Is that fair to say?
No, I don't think it is fair to say if you get into the trenches. Now, a better example of the first vision is Paul relates his vision 3 times to Felix and the different governors, and there are minor differences. Joseph Smith's first vision, they're whoppers. In fact, a lot of people here may not know or believe this, but the first visions of Joseph Smith and those 3 installments is one of the most problematic foundational stones of the entire Mormon religion. It is much more of a problem than most members or even critics are aware of, and I have a chapter on that in this book, and I don't think there's anywhere to go for the apologists after this. But they always come up with something, right? But
you see a solid case with the Bible and with the base narrative of Christianity where you see flaws with Mormonism. It's fair to say. It's obvious.
Well, that's a pretty broad statement. Whoever wrote the Book of Revelation, he has traded in the peace donkey of Jesus for a war horse. I don't like his chapters on war, and that's one reason. It was one of the original people who canonized the New Testament did not like Revelation. Those were apocalyptic chapters. And that is a direct contradiction to what Jesus says the end times apocalypse is in Matthew 25. And I think you have a problem in the New Testament, just as you have a problem in the Old Testament. This go get them, destroy them, initiate the carnage, God. When you understand how the Old Testament was put together, you can begin to understand. Besides that, Jesus gives softer renditions of the flood. He doesn't say it's universal. He doesn't say God caused it. Same with Sodom and Gomorrah and the 5 cities of the plains. He doesn't say God was responsible for that instant urban renewal. He says they will be judged in the judgment which comes at the end of the world. He has softer interpretations of go into Canaan, children of Israel, and kill everything that breathes. None of that. And Jesus encounters this kind of thing with lepers. That's why he hung out with them. How do you know the leper is a sinner? Because Deuteronomy says they've got leprosy. Jesus says no. Jesus' disciples. Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he's born blind? Neither. He's not buying that Deuteronomic God, and he's ruined the character of God, and that's how he got a violent reputation in the Bible, in my view. And I published that article 2 months ago in John Whitmer Journal, but it's one of these 20 chapters.
So, yeah, and that's a really important chapter in the book. There's a chapter on the Old Testament and how those who want to believe don't have to believe in a nasty, retributive, sort of genocidal God.
No. And see, in the Mormon Church, we never talk about how the Old Testament came to be, nor do we talk about in detail how the New Testament came to be. And I think those are important.
Yeah. You also talk about the second coming in a chapter, and the gist I got from it is that it's not necessarily anytime soon. Is that a fair summary?
No, and that's probably the most controversial.
No, it's not a fair summary, or no, that's not what you said? Or
no, I agree with what you just said.
It is coming.
But it is, because I am taking Zechariah 12, 13, and 14 and applying real-world events. And if you do that, there's about 8 things that have to happen, and we're only into about number 3 of what Zechariah was a prophet and a priest in 520 BC, and they've been conquered by the Babylonians, and he wants to give them hope. So he says, God has shown me the future, what's going to happen to the Jewish people, the Gentiles, right up to a golden age. And so I've taken that and run with it, and you'll have to see if I have done justice to what he's saying. I like to think I have, but it's a little more dicey.
For you, we're not in the latter days necessarily.
No,
at least not the way
it's not imminent, and people who say it is, they need to read Zechariah 12, 13, and 14.
Okay. Really quickly, a lot of people who struggle with Christianity just struggle with the need, number one, the need for an atonement. That why is God holding us all responsible for sin that sin quotes, that we come by naturally anyway? And then why does he have to punish not only someone, but his own son as a way to sort of counterbalance and justify all the sin that we all come by naturally anyway? Why the need for an atonement at all for you? What is the atonement? And you have a chapter about this. What is the atonement for you? Why is it needed?
Well, this is getting into a little more complicated stuff, but let me just say that I do not find the theology that has been given for why we need an atonement very satisfying. And that includes, and they appeared in this order in Christian history, the substitution theory, the ransom theory, the satisfaction theory, which the Book of Mormon is quite high on. And then there are a variety of moral theories. I don't like any of them. The first 3 are attached to a literal Garden of Eden, and there may have been a real Adam and Eve, but they're trying to answer it. Paul especially is trying to answer it because he believes in a literal Garden of Eden. I don't know that science, as we move along, is kind of moving away from that, but that's heresy to a Christian. But more important is if you look at the Garden of Eden and its choices, you begin to see that the paradise of Eden is remarkably similar to the city of God. And there you find very, very similar things going on. And the thought occurred to me, is this a metaphor or figurative for the decision that all mankind had to make to come to mortality? Or was there really a literal Garden of Eden? So I decided to explore. And I'm not saying there wasn't a Garden of Eden. I'm just saying that whether there was or not, we still have the same problems whether there was a Garden of Eden or not, which is we are not living spiritually in the city of God, and we're going to die mortally.
So I still see a need for an atonement. So I began to give, in a question and answer format, why? And boy, it's a little different than what you'd get from the substitution, ransom, satisfaction, and moral theories. And it basically goes, the crux of it goes like this. Oh, this is hard. Jesus, the book of Hebrews says that Jesus learned by what he suffered. And one of the things he learned, I think, is that he suffered a lot in life, but it was in the cross and to some extent Gethsemane that he is where I think his judgment was perfected. God says in Isaiah 53:10, "It is my will to crush him." And you think, why would a God do anything like that to his son? Because Jesus is the representation and the express image of God the Father. And yet he requires this of his son. And boy, that is an enigma. That is a problem. And I started thinking about that. And I think God allowed Jesus to experience the depth of sin and the problems of humanity because I think it would make him more forgiving. God is giving him the judgment. You judge him. You assign him to kingdom. You resurrect him. No CEO on this earth has that kind of infinite power. It's something that Jesus could not learn from a book. It's something that he experienced. And by descending below all things, Jesus became, underline, Christ. And the Father said to him, Jesus would never, ever forget that. He couldn't. And so I think it has to do with making him a perfect judge. That's why I think he wanted him crushed with pain. Now, I may be wrong, but I always like to try to make it reasonable and logical. I don't believe that, like some religions, that spiritual truths are different from regular truths. I think you have an obligation to make it as logical and consistent as you possibly can, and then you make the leap of faith. And I don't know if this would satisfy the people in this room, but this is my answer to that question.
So for you,
and I can't do it when you tie the atonement to a literal Garden of Eden and to the substitution theory.
So it wasn't so much about allowing us to be forgiven for our sins. It was for Jesus' own personal development.
Yes.
And
he's saying, I've been given all this power. He goes to heaven. He says, Mary, I've got to go to heaven. Jesus, when he comes back, he tells the apostles, all power has been given to me. I am the Christ.
And for you, I'm guessing that's a bit of an enigma with your challenge of the Old Testament God that is a cruel God, him doing that to his son. I'm guessing that remains an enigma for you.
And I deal with that. I didn't escape that.
Okay.
And Abraham, he got the ram in the thicket for his son Isaac. Jesus was the ram in the thicket. And the Old Testament is consistent in that. And that Isaiah 53:10 hits the nail right on the head. It is my will, God's will, that you be crushed with pain. That's the Catholic Bible. I like their statement, but it's also in the NIV and the King James, but not quite as strong as that.
So it's brutal, but the Old Testament prophesies it, so it sort of must be.
Well, and that's what Peter doesn't get it, and Jesus says, you don't understand, Peter. We have got to fulfill Scripture. And I think they did. They went out, they filled Scripture more than you think. They actually made an effort to fill Old Testament Scripture. This was not something that was happenstance. When he rides that donkey in, they got that donkey because they knew that Micah talked about that.
Got it. Shifting gears a tiny bit, there are many of us who feel like faith is kind of dead. God and Jesus just aren't really on the table, and that's it. It's kind of the secular worldview. But we're young, and I'm just wondering if proximity to the end of this mortal life incents a belief in Christ, and if that's been something that has influenced you, knowing that you're closer maybe to the end than the beginning.
No, it has not influenced me, but I would hope it would influence some of you young people. But I was going to say something else. What was it?
So for you, it's not, you wouldn't...
Secularism.
Yeah.
This is the hardest question to ask of all. Why do I need a Jesus in my life? And that's a tough one. All I can say, and this comes under almost testimony, is I have found the 4 promises of Jesus made in John. My peace I give unto you. I will bring things to your remembrance. I will manifest myself in your life. And there's one more. I've found that to be true in my life. Jesus never says that I know of. He never invited anyone to know who he was by some kind of spiritual feeling. Never does that. Now, there are a couple of examples where people felt this feeling, but he never uses that as an example or as an approach to who he is, if you want to know. He says, you want to know who I am? Try this. Make an experiment. Do this. And put this in your life, and then you will get the blessings that I'm promising you. That's the way he thinks. And all I can say is that has been true for me.
Excellent. Okay, well, the chapters on the Bible are very interesting, especially for those who are wanting to give Jesus and the Bible a second chance. We tried to touch on some of that. There's a whole second half of the book that's on LDS related issues, and we're not going to have time tonight to dig into any of those. I will just say that there's a chapter on sources for the Book of Abraham and the Book of Mormon, kind of where Joseph may have gotten some of the inspiration or the information for those books. There's a chapter on Joseph's changing view of God and how that changes over time. That's something I talked about with Jeremy in our interview, and how you can't just look at the Book of Mormon and the changes to the Book of Mormon in isolation. But if you look at how Joseph's view of God changed, and then you look at both the original Book of Mormon and the lectures on faith, and then the changes to the Book of Mormon, and then how Joseph's view on God changed into the Nauvoo time period, that's when a real understanding of sort of how changing and flexible that view was.
It's a mess.
Yeah. So there's a chapter on that. You have a chapter on Moroni and the Golden Pot.
Explanation, more of that for those who want to know.
Because that's been one of the, observations or controversies, is how much substance there is. There's a really good chapter on Joseph Smith, Captain Kidd, and Cumorah and Moroni. Those of you who know Joseph Smith was reading about Captain Kidd, most likely, and in that book, it mentions a Cumorah and a Moroni. And there's good stuff on William and Jane Law and sexual allegations against Joseph Smith. There's a chapter on thoughts about what anti-Mormon is and isn't. I'm just gonna share a quote. What is deemed anti-Mormon to one generation may be sound scholarship to a later generation. You guys like that verse? Has that come true?
Very much.
I like that. What I do want to get on record, if you're comfortable sharing it, and this may be repetitive for many of you, but probably the most question that I received from our listeners was for you to tell the story of this sort of famous general authority or anonymous general authority that you had some discussions with. And would you mind retelling that and giving us any updates that you're comfortable doing? Because I don't know that there's an audio record of you telling that story.
Well, I cannot vouch for what he told me. I believe he sincerely believes it. I've put this in my new book. and we've met maybe 8 times. In fact, he was in my home last Wednesday night. And
How did he first reach out to you?
a mission president wanted to meet with me, and then 2 days later he called up and he says, there's a general authority who would like to come with me.
And this is a emeritus general authority?
He is now, yes.
Okay.
But
When he first met with you, was he still emeritus? Not sure. Okay.
This man has done everything. He was around when there was one Quorum of 70. When the Quorum of 12 and the one Quorum of 70 would go out and they were more intimate and share things and this kind of thing. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I asked the general authority, where'd you get my book? And he says, on the internet. And I says to the mission president, where'd you get yours? And he says, from him. And they both told me they don't believe. The GA's wife doesn't believe. And so we started into a series of questions. And he told me that the Quorum of the 12, just the Quorum of the 12, received $1 million so that they could pay off all their debts and
So
not have to worry about each member of the 12.
Gets $1 million.
In subsequent discussions, like I said, I had about 8 with him in 2012, 13 and 14, maybe 1 and 15. And he later told me, I says, where'd you get this information? He says, I got it from a security guard during the administration of Spencer W. Kimball. I says, a security guard? And he says, oh, don't think of buildings. This is a security guard that guards personnel files and intellectual property. And he went through those files. And then he said to me, he says, that's a long time ago. Maybe they make more than $1 million now. I don't know. But he really believed that. I says, well, how do you know they don't believe? And he says, well, they've never said as such that they don't believe, but it's the things.
So wait, he made the assertion that what? Before you explain that, what was the assertion he made about the belief of the members of the quorum?
Well, he said that, I says, how do you know they don't believe? And he says, because I've been with them. This is a man that's been a temple president, a mission president, an area president. He says, just the way they act. They don't want to talk about the foundations of the church. They will not talk about truth issues. And I tried, and they just won't go there. That was a red flag to me, he says. The other is the way they act. They're not so spiritual when they're out on the campaign trail, so to speak. And then he says, every general authority, and this is every general authority, gets their second anointings. That's kind of a guarantee for heaven. And he says even some of them got their second anointings, and then they were called to be a 70 or an apostle. So I put the subsequent discussions into this new book title. He says he felt like a hypocrite. He says, I'm trapped. The mission president said, I'm trapped. He says, we go every week. It's hell. And they asked me to do firesides, and I try to give them something. But the man is in hell.
He feels trapped. Why?
Because if he should speak up and come clean, they just say he's mentally ill or do something to compromise him, ruin his family. Who knows? His own kids don't know. There's a lot of pressure at the top. Look, this is a hush-hush organization. I remember the mission president telling me, he says, you know, there was a 70 recently who committed suicide. Did you hear about that? No. And you never will. There's mission presidents who discover the truth, and they come home, and the church will say things like, well, we're going to say that you're sick to your missionaries, and you are never to tell anyone the reason you came home. And they come home. So this is a very, child molestations. They buy them off out of court. I mean, this is a very rich church with a lot of secrecy. The secrecy of Mormon could be called secrecy. And I learned quite a bit of this and some of the things that the general authorities did, which I told the GI I would not tell because the stories would identify him. And I've been true to that. But anyway, it seemed to be a match they both liked, because I could teach them history and they could tell me about the structure of the church. So it worked out pretty well.
If someone were to say, though, that that's a stretch to say that they don't act spiritual and they won't answer hard questions, therefore they don't believe. I mean, that's
their prerogative. But some of the stories he told me about President Thomas S. Monson make your hair curl.
But you can't tell them.
But I can't tell them.
Okay.
I said I wouldn't.
Do you get a sense that this general authority will someday leave a record?
No, I offered to tape him, to put him in my records at the Special Collections at the University of Utah and put a 25-year time limit on it, and he said no.
But you could still write down the stories and do that.
Well, I guess I could. What would you advise?
It would not be mine to advise you one way or the other. I mean, honestly, it is something. I know integrity is important to you, so.
Some of the stories he told me, if they're true, are hair-raising.
Yeah.
Really, I mean hair-raising.
Okay, so as far as the future goes, for anyone out there who is wanting to make a difference, a kind of a difference that you've made, what advice would you give to someone who wants to try and make an impact?
Well, I think they already are. This couple over here is Elf on the Shelf. They're doing their thing. Jeremy Reynolds says he's going to keep the...
Should we give a shout out to the Zelfies?
Jeremy Reynolds says he's going to keep the legacy going. And look, there's going to be many, many, many more people come out of Mormonism long after I'm gone, and our books seem kind of old, and it's kind of like I haven't heard of a lot of new musical artists. This is the same idea. You have to keep them. You have to keep the books coming out for the next generation and for those who are ready to listen and hear. So do what you need to do to that you think is right to keep this legacy alive, because I think it's important.
Name the legacy. What is the legacy that we're keeping alive?
Just the truth about Mormon history, about the Mormon Jesus. I don't find he's worth saving.
One historian wrote, he's not a faithful historian, and he wrote that it's actually harder to be a non-believing historian than a believing one. And I think he's saying in relation to the MHA, Mormon History Association, do you find it that it's more challenging in 2017 to be a successful historian when you're no longer believing? Have you found that?
I don't really have a strong answer on that.
Okay.
The Mormon History Association has kind of become a travel club. A lot of Sunday school thrown in. I haven't gone there for several years, but I'm told this is the case. John Whitmer's still doing good stuff. Now, there's a man who wrote a book. I was kind of harsh on him, but I think his book has sold well. What was it? He's not a Mormon, and yet he wrote a book on Joseph Smith. I think it's done quite well.
American Crucifixion?
Yeah,
Alex
American
Beam?
Crucifixion.
Alex Beam?
Yeah, you ask Alex Beam that. Maybe he'll know
Okay.
how he feels.
Where do you see the church going in 20 to 30 years? Do you have any prophecy?
I ask everyone that question, and of course nobody knows. I think it's going to continue to degrade. They're doubling down right now. I think the vitality is not what it once was. James Talmage wrote a book in 1915 called The Vitality of Mormonism. I think they're losing the vitality of Mormonism. And maybe it's just me who've become jaundiced and haven't gone to church for a while, but I try to keep my fingers in the pie enough to know that. I think they won't do much about it until there's a real tipping point, and there will be a tipping point in the Utah Salt Lake area. And when that comes, whoever's in charge is going to have to make a decision whether we're going to be truthful and let the chips fall like the Community of Christ has, or then decide to be largely an irrelevant religion. Because like I said in Sunstone, Richard Bushman says the church cannot keep teaching the same narrative. They cannot sustain the same narrative as they have in the past, and yet they're trying to do it. And it'll work in Paraguay, but they don't have the internet, and the world will get the internet, and in time, even I get all kinds of emails from Brazil and Chile and Colombia, all over Japan, more than I used to. And I think if they're going to keep preaching the same narrative, and the same narrative is kind of like, guess what, folks? The earth is flat, when more and more people are finding out it's round, and they're getting some real credibility. And there are more and more missionaries who are coming home, and they've talked to guys like us, and guys and gals like us, that's what I meant to say. And they're coming home, and they are looking things up. I had a mission president tell me that. He had to interview all 212 of his missionaries. He was a mission president here. He's an atheist, by the way. 3-time mission president. He just couldn't turn down Elder Holland. And he's more afraid of his wife than he is the truth. And he tells me, I go to lunch with him every couple of months, and he tells me that a number of those missionaries are going to go home and they're going to look into things because of what people have said to them on Temple Square. And so the church did a very good thing in getting 18, 19-year-olds to go, but the problem is when they come home now, that's when they're confronting it. So what's going to happen in the future? I don't know, but I don't think it's going to be a robust religion any longer. It's in a sense of degrading in Europe and in Great Britain. And in some parts of Asia, Japan is, wow. And they are growing in Ghana, but someone said it took 100 tithe payers for people like us in Ghana to make up for one of your tithings. So that's not looking good financially. That's why they're into the investment business, I think.
I once had the chance twice had the chance to meet with an apostle, and it was, I said, I'm not going to embarrass, my brother who made the meeting, but I do want to ask a question, but I gave myself a rule for the question, which was, what's a recommendation I could make to the church that wouldn't harm the church, that would still allow it to remain robust, to retain the tithing, to retain the membership? Do you have any recommendations you could make to the church that wouldn't weaken the church?
Well, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I just think they ought to repent and come clean out the whole closet. Do what the RLDS church has done.
But what if that harms the church?
It did harm the church, but now the bleeding has stopped and they're starting to grow. And they put Jesus Christ first and anything that's problematic in the background. To me, that's the answer. They're not going to do it because of the money and the influence, but long term, they'll get to the point where they might have to make that decision. They might as well do it now instead of 25 years from now. But I don't think there's much question that they're going to degrade.
So you're saying do what is right, let the consequence follow.
Yeah,
Is that what you're
exactly.
saying? Okay.
It's their own stuff. Repent. Do what is right. Let the consequence follows, and they're too prideful to do it. They need a burst of integrity, and they don't have it yet.
Well, we'll keep working on that.
Well, yes, and that's part of the legacy to get them to do it, because they're not going to do it on their own. They're going to be pushed and shoved. They're going to have a Gorbachev moment when he realized that Russia was becoming a third world, and then he started saying, I think we better come clean and deal with this. We might have a ex-KGB in the general authorities who will become president and do something about it. That's my hope.
And this is one of the biggest, most common questions I get. Do you think the apostles in the first presidency believe the church is true, or do you think they don't?
I think it's everywhere in between. But they don't have the time, nor would they. Would you look if you were one of them? Would you look beneath the veneer?
Yes.
Maybe you would.
But I'm not.
But remember, as my GA says, they only put people in at that level that are church broke. That's his word.
What do you mean by that?
It means they'll do it whatever they're told to do. And that's who they want.
Like a
there.
horse is broke, is that what you mean?
And then they've got their second anointings, and then they got all that money. And so he doesn't think any of them will ever come out. But we might get a Gorbachev who comes up through the ranks and becomes president and realizes, gee, this church is not what it could be or should be or once was. And when that happens, there might be a burst of integrity. That's what I hope for.
What can you tell us about what it's like to be sort of staring the end of your mortality kind of square in the face?
I'm comfortable with it. You know, you can say, why me? And then you can say, why not me? I've had 3 surgeries, pretty serious surgeries in 15 years, and I wouldn't want to go around and get in line again for another one. And they've ruled out surgery on me. It's metastasized, and they've ruled out radiation. So it comes down to chemo, and I'm finding out everyone has a recipe for how to cure cancer. Everything you can imagine, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. But no, I don't. I'm sure before it's over, I'll feel the full gamut of emotions, especially when I talk to my children at the end, the last time. But no, I don't. I just, as it comes, I'll accept it.
So right now, not a lot of sadness or fear?
No fear. I'm sure there'll be a little sadness. I can't help it. And we'll see when it gets really bad. I said to the doctor, I says, can you control this pain? He says, yes. Okay, I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Do you think your void of fear is your testimony and your confidence that there is an afterlife and that it's just a transition?
Yes, but it's just something part of me that just thinks that I'm going on. I can't articulate in every way or form. It just seems to be the way it is. And maybe that's my bias in growing up. Who knows? But no, I don't have any fear. I hope I don't. I mean, it's not over yet, is it? By the way, I'm doing better than I thought. I probably ought to say this. I had 2/3 of my stomach removed over Christmas, and I was left pretty weak, as my wife can tell you. And I didn't know when the new cancer was going to start affecting me, but there's been a little window of healing. That's why I'm as strong as I am right now. I've had about 3 weeks of being as strong as I am, because I wasn't this way 3 weeks ago, was I? And so I'm grateful for that. But once you start the therapy, you're in it again, and that starts March 1st. But I'm grateful for this little window of time. So if you wonder why, I think John said I had weeks to live. No, that was not ever the case, but it is months. And if the therapy works, which is a 30% chance it will, then maybe a year. Okay, so it's a fast growing. I looked at the chart. It looks like a galaxy. It's so bright and hot. Not good.
Well, I'm super happy to have been wrong about that.
Me too.
And we'll take you for as long as we can have you.
I take it a day at a time.
Yeah. Things were sketchy when we first talked, so...
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm glad the prognosis is better. I certainly wasn't going to wait around, I'll tell you that. You're going to have family that never really get to know a lot of these things you're telling us until they watch this video later, honestly.
Yeah.
What would you say to any family member that sort of has some final thoughts? Is there anything you'd want to say? Because I can guarantee you, whether it's children or grandchildren, this will be the way that they come to know you. And I'm wondering if you would have any words for them.
Well, I was gratified to learn that a couple of my relatives, I'm not going to say anymore, came to me in January and said, "We've been studying this and we know it's not true, and we were told that you were deceived, and it turns out that our parents were deceived, or our grandparents. I'm not going to get any closer than that." And that was quite gratifying to see them see that they were happy to figure this out before I moved on. And but I've already told Rhett what to tell them when they come around. Tell them I've already forgiven them. I've been there. I know how stubborn you can be when you're a total believer. And
Forgiven them for what?
For not reading anything, for not taking a look. And I'm so confident about that the evidence is so overwhelming there's no other way to go. I mean, I even told my parents, they were dyed in the heart, dyed in the wool. They were temple supervisors, and just my mother had been a stake relief society president for 9 years. My father's in a bishopric, lived across the street and 3 houses down from Bruce and Amelia McConkie. They were socially friends. They knew Joseph Finley Smith, so on. They were just solid. I had to finally tell him, I says, I found out about the church and Joseph Smith in this life, and you will find out in the next. That's how confident I am.
The way that we like to always end our Mormon Stories interviews is with asking what you believe, what your testimony is now. And so as we're winding to the close of this part of tonight, I've really enjoyed the interview. There's so much more that we couldn't cover, but what I'd really love to do is end with your testimony and take as much as you want. And it doesn't have to be a religious testimony, although if that's an important thing to you, then please include that. But also please just include wisdom, life philosophy, what you would want, let's just say your eulogy, what would you want to be said about what was important to you and what you stood for and what you believe?
Well, I stood up for what I believed. I made a difference. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and he has not disappointed me. I can say that's as close as I'll get to testimony. I hope the legacy keeps going. I think it's really important. There's going to come a time when old-timers know all the history, and there's nothing new here. I've tried to put a few articles in this new book that are new, such as Joseph Smith believed in concubinage before he went into polygamy. I don't think many people understand that. And what's concubine? A wife for the night. I had a prayer that you should sleep with me. Do you consent? Yes. Well, let's go. That's how it started out. And then later it morphed into a ceremony and part of exaltation and witnesses and ritual and all of the above. That's a new ripple for most people, and it's in this book. This Council of 50 stuff is new. Now that we have the actual minutes, I have a chapter in the book on, did Joseph Smith commit treason in 1844 by establishing the Council of 50 and all of that? And boy, I can't understand, and neither can Michael Marquardt, why they published that book on the Council of 50 minutes, because it's dynamite. It is just hair-raising stuff, and most LDS people don't know a thing about that, and it is more insight into the Mormon God, and it comes back to 3rd Nephi about how if the Gentiles don't repent, they're going to get swept off the land by the Indians, and Joseph Smith is leading them as their king and God. Wow. And they actually have plans and put them into operation to do this. They don't think much of the Constitution like they do down in Provo on the 4th of July parade. But the legacy must go on. And there will be new people who will need to see new books and new topics. So keep doing what you're doing, and you keep doing what you're doing, Jeremy, and self on the shelf, and keep it going. That would be my hope.
And what do you believe?
What do I believe?
Give us your testimony. And it, again, not just religious, but that's fine. Just about character, life, what you believe you stand for, and what you want to leave as.
Well, just be your true self. Don't be so afraid. When you get to my point, you don't care what people think. You just, because you're going. What do I believe? I believe in being honest with yourself. And I think when you're honest with yourself and you don't try to, it's more likely that your friends and relatives will notice that than if you try to hide and go around curves and not say anything, because where you can speak up, speak up. Where you can't and it's too costly, don't. That's my philosophy. But we need to speak up where we can. And I just hope you will. Don't be a coward. There's plenty of cowards running around. Just try to be honest, be yourself. And if you are, I think people will respect you. I got the nicest letter from Ron Prittis at Signature Books, and he says, you've been true to what you believe, and we admire that in you. You haven't changed. You haven't, if you like Jesus, you've kept saying that. We admire that in you. That's pretty good for a group of agnostics down there.
And do you want to give a religious testimony?
Well, the only thing I would say is that I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and he hasn't disappointed me. That's all I can say. I believe what he said, and it's come true in my life, and I'm hanging on to that. I feel the need. I think he's made my life richer. For people who say I don't need him, I would say you're missing some things. And he can be in your life, and he can guide you and direct you where you should go. At least I feel him with me. And I don't have any apologetical qualms about that. It's just the way it is with me. That's enough.
Anything you want to say to your wife and kids?
Yes, I appreciate their support. I really, really do. It means a lot. And I'm happy that they're here tonight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for all of you coming.
All right, should we give Grant a round of applause? I'll stand for that. Now, for those of you who may be tempted to go, we are going to have a special treat really quick. So don't bail yet if you want the special treat. My dear friend, Tyler Glenn, who has been an incredible friend and support through the past several months and more, has agreed to sing for us tonight. So we're going to invite Tyler up now, and he's going to share a song with us before the little concluding remarks, and then Tyler's going to finish with another song. So, yeah, this is my dear friend Tyler Glenn, lead singer of Neon Trees, and super cool guy. So, Tyler Glenn, everybody.
I wanted to play a song that I wrote during my faith crisis last year, and I want to personally thank you, sir. Yours and a handful of others were there to, your stories were there to catch me when I was falling, and I've just been hearing you talk back there, and it's just remarkable. So I'm honored to sing, and I hope that I can play well for you. Faith, please have a little in me, hey. I know you hate it when I stray, but I tried everything. I drank the wine and stained the sheets. I'm clumsy when I speak. Call, you never call me anymore. Past the point of self-control, I'm giving back to you things I thought were true. I know it's really nothing new. God, where the hell are you hiding? My hands are in the air and I'm excited. I've been on the run, so I'm not coming Sunday, it's alright. Probably talk to you at midnight, God. I could never be like you. I can't change, and I don't want to. I've been on the run, so I'm not coming Sunday, it's alright. I'll probably talk to you at midnight. It was fear, that's what it was, just to be clear. You went and made everything weird, but that's another song, another night, a shot of rum. But guess what's done is done, and what's right, I fought and stumbled towards the light. I miss the days and nights we wrestled in my bedroom. My knees will give out soon. I know it's really nothing new. But God, where the hell are you hiding? My hands are in the air, it's so exciting. I've been on the run, so I'm not coming Sunday, it's alright. I'll probably talk to you at midnight, God. I can never be like you. I can't change, and I don't want to. I've been on the run, so I'm not coming Sunday, it's alright. I'll probably talk to you at midnight. I'll probably talk to you at midnight. Ooh. God, where the hell are you hiding? My hands are in the air decided I've been on the run, so I'm not coming someday. It's alright, I'll probably talk to you at midnight.
It's Tyler Glenn, everybody. Thank you, Tyler. And we have one more for the end. All right. Well, this can get really unwieldy really quick, and you've all been here for quite some time. But let's just say, for those few of you who feel really moved by whatever spirit you may get moved by, please just take a few of you take a minute to express to Grant what he's meant to you. Is that all right? The floor is now yours. And here's the mic. All right. Please keep them brief.
I love you, Grant Palmer. You're a friend, even though you kept me waiting 8 hours in your excommunication or your disciplinary council, and then ran off. And we became friends because of that. But you, as I said the other day, brought me back from the edge of unbelief to a semblance of belief, which is a lot to me. So thank you.
Just like when 9/11 happened or when President Reagan was shot, we remember exactly where we were when we read Grant Palmer's book.
All of us would like to somehow come up with the words to tell you what you've meant to us and to thank you for all you've done. And I was telling your daughter-in-law, and she asked me to share with you that an old song that maybe only someone of our age could remember said, "How can we thank you? What do you want? What can we do to give to you back what you've given us?" And one of the things that you've given me is a path to the Savior that I missed during my years in Mormonism. And I cannot tell you how much that has changed how I feel about this new place in my life. But it says, quickly, if you wanted the moon, I would try to make a start, but I would rather that we could give you our hearts. To Mr. Palmer, with love.
15 months ago, I read the CS letter, so thank you, Jeremy. And immediately knew that the church wasn't true, but I went into an intensive period of making sure that I hadn't been deceived by Jeremy. And I read the, No Man Knows My History, and I read your Insider's View of Mormon, Origins, sorry. And I thank you. And I watched your Aha Moments video, and they became my aha moments. And I just wanted to thank you. And you remind me a lot of my father-in-law, who had been out of the church for many years, Richard Layton. And he was a gentleman, a sweet man, and he tried to tell us that the church wasn't true, but he did it in such a soft-spoken way that we didn't listen to him. And I never got a chance to thank him for his example and what he did, how he stood up for it. And so I want to thank you for standing up for what's right and what you've done. So thank you.
Grant, I think all of us would probably say one of the hardest things, in my case, the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life was when those seeds of doubt got really strong and I started to really say, is there a chance that what I believe is not true? The whole earth shook underneath me. And as I thought about the implications of that, and as I studied more, I thought, this is such a big decision. There is so much writing on this. What if I get this wrong? What if I get this wrong? I saw 2 different counselors numerous times. And, at the end of the day, they couldn't help me. And I don't think anything helped me come to peace with my decision that I was doing the right thing personally for me and for my family and those I love. Nothing helped me more than your book. I'm on my 4th time. My wife will tell you I read a little bit of it every night just before I go to bed. I'm on my 4th time through it. It's not that I expect to find many things I haven't read, although I do find new things. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because that was such a difficult experience for me. And you helped me be at peace with my decision and to know that the decision I had made was the right one. And I can't thank you enough for that. So thank you.
So Grant, I just want to acknowledge in you some characteristics that you have that are really inspiring. First of all, the characteristic of curiosity, to learn and find out and investigate to the degree that you have. Your capability to write and communicate what you found. And probably mostly the courage that it took to do that. And behind all of that is the love that you have for all of humanity. So thank you.
Grant, I'm one of the lesser known people in this room. Probably 90% of you have no idea who I am, but when you were mentioning the advice that you'd give, you mentioned that you want the rising generation to continue to be a voice and to continue to write and to continue to help. And my transition out of Mormonism was the most painful thing I've ever been through. But your book helped me to realize that it was real, the transition and the truth about church history, but it gave me hope and it gave me something. It gave me a feeling that life gets better, and life certainly does get better. So I'd just like to thank you personally for your integrity and how it's changed my life and saved my life in many ways. And I will definitely take your charge, even though I don't have a voice right now. I want to, and I want to help so many people that have gone through what I've gone through. And it's never been more important than now. Thank you, Grant. We all love you so very much.
You were very scary to me. I had a chance to apologize to Sandra Tanner too, because in my generation you never said the name Sandra or Gerald Tanner. And if you even looked at anything like that, it was just the, I can't even explain. You'd have to be me, I guess, and go through all of that. And as my husband and I were starting to figure some things out, it began with the question, what if the brethren are not right? And that's how it started for us. And someone said I needed to order your book. When it came, Grant, I looked at it and I felt terror. I was afraid. And I walked in the bedroom and I put it on the bed and I looked at it and I kept saying to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing? And I set it there, and then my daughter came to visit for a little while, and then I looked back for the book and it was gone. My daughter had taken it home to read it. Well, then that opened up a whole can of worms that I've done this terrible thing to my daughter now. And these are all the things that, I don't know if any of you have gone through any of these things, but those are the things I went through. But she came back and she told us about the book and how wonderful the book was and how much it helped her. And we started to read the book, and some of our best conversations came out of your book, Grant, with my husband and I. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for the fact that it was the beginning of me thinking on my own, giving myself permission and respecting my inner voice. And it's just gone from there. And there are people that have come into our lives that have done that. But I thank you for that, Grant. Thank you very much. And I thank you too, because I know this had to be hard for you too, and you kids and stuff. We just want you to know that there's a whole bunch of people that appreciate everything that you guys did.
So the Spirit told me to come up here. So I get emails often at 3 o'clock in the morning from folks who read the CES letter, for example. You were my 3 o'clock in the morning with that book. It just completely changed. Did everybody hear that? So I get emails at 3 o'clock in the morning, and people, when they're done reading. And I was done reading early in the morning. And I just remember my mind was racing, and there was a lot of questions. So you really changed my life in a lot of ways. I stand on your shoulders. We all stand on your shoulders. You've done so much. You've created a legacy that you can and should be proud of. So we're grateful for you, Grant. We love you and appreciate you, and thank you.
So I don't know if you know this, but 15 years ago when Rhett, my husband, his son, asked me to read the Insider book with him, I wasn't very happy to be reading an anti-Mormon book because I was very active and believing. And after reading the book, I thought it was pretty amazing that you could put in everything you see and all the facts that you found in a way that didn't come across as all-knowing and anti-Mormon in the least. And so it allowed me the room to really consider what you had written and take it on. And we have been much better leaving because of your book, so thank you very much. And I think when he talks about family and the love that we have despite all the different beliefs, he is at the crux of that, because at his Christian heart, he is very loving and he wants his family to be together. So as the Christian that he is the crux of the love of our family. I have discussed atheism with him at length, and he is very understanding and loving towards me. I never feel threatened when we have discussions of different beliefs, and I really appreciate that and hope to pass that down to our kids also. So thank you, Grant. I love you.
Grant, I'm so grateful too for what your book did for me when I thought I was going crazy, and helped me to see that I wasn't. But I want to mention a little something about my daughter-in-law, who was thought her world had fallen in when her husband had told her about his doubts, and he went to the bishop, and the bishop showed up that night and took both their recommends, and she was totally believing. And she was devastated, and she started to question and read your book, and she needed someone to reach out to, and she reached out to Grant through an email or letter, and he instantly wrote back and offered comfort and wisdom, and it touched her heart so much that someone who didn't know her from Adam would care enough to write back and continue a little dialogue with her to help her get through that time when she was brokenhearted. And so I want to thank you too for being such a wonderful Christian in the way you live your life also. Thank you.
When I first started finding out some things that wrecked my world, your book was one of the first books I bought, and then I found you on, you were having some kind of lunch with probably, I think there were about 15 people. It was the first event that I ever went to when I was wondering what my life was going to be, and I brought my husband, who still thought I was messed up and going down the wrong trail. And I am so thankful that you were not scary, and you were sane and safe and gentle and inclusive. And I will always remember that lunch we had with you. Thank you so much.
If I just don't cry. Many years ago, two dumb young kids decided the emperor didn't have any clothes on, and we spent the rest of our lives trying to prove to everybody that that was the case. And I always kind of felt like people joke about the cows in Wyoming, that if the wind ever quit blowing, they'd all fall over. So here we were all these years standing against the wind, and it's kind of lonely out there. One of the problems we faced in reaching the community, we didn't have an adult experience in Mormonism. We left at the time we got married. And in that sense, although we went through pain, we went through struggle, we went through our problems with our families, it was not the pain of someone who's given their whole heart and life to the system, like Grant has done, and then have the courage to stand up and say, the facts are different than I thought, and I want you all to know what I've discovered. And so I just really respect Grant for having the courage at that point in his life to take that stand. I realize how hard that would be, and I honor him tonight for that, for taking that stand. Grant's book is one of the go-to books at the store. People that come in, they start with Grant, because when they see that he was in CES, it's not so scary that they know he experienced it and committed himself in true devotion to Mormonism all those years. And for him to take a second look is opening a door for others to say, this man has credibility. He is someone that I can trust to read, that he'll be honest with me. And so I thank you so much for your book. And like I say, it's one of our go-to first introduction books for people coming. And I applaud you for your courage of standing for truth, and also for your standing for Christ. Thank you.
Final call.
Grant, I could thank you on many different levels. But tonight I just want to thank you for taking care of my mom, and thanks for being her best friend these past, 24, 25 years. And thanks for treating me like one of your own sons. I do appreciate that, and I've said it before, maybe not directly to you, but you will definitely be missed, but never forgotten. So thank you for all that you've done for us and our family.
I'm so grateful that I came up here tonight. It's been a long time since I've seen you. A long, strange trip the last 20, 25 years. We were both working on our books roughly the same time. Brent Metcalf and I working on our books at the same time, and you working on yours. We had so many historic conversations in the Signature Books office. I remember standing there talking to Grant about his book, when he was working on it, and what he had found, and giving us the details. Anyway, I'm just so grateful to you, Grant, for your life and for your work. And I wanted to be here tonight to tell you how much I love you. And how much I honor your journey, and how important it is for us to honor each other's journeys. Your courage and your honesty in confronting the information and the problems and the contradictions and the untruths and the truths, and sifting the untruths from the truths, and the way you've gone about it. And even though you and I agree on many things and disagree on many other things, and would interpret Joseph Smith and the First Vision and the Mormon Christ differently, I honor your interpretations, and it was so beautiful to listen to you express your knowledge and your research tonight. As I sat there and listened to you, I was really struck by the power and the truth and the integrity in your words. And I was very, very moved, and yet again came away feeling a great admiration for you, for your work and your life and your intellect. I love what you said about what a colossal waste it would be if our personalities don't continue. I'm with you, brother. We continue. And I'm grateful that yours will continue. There's a whole universe of experience and knowledge and sacrifice in your work. And I'm in awe of what you shared with us tonight. I'm very, very grateful for your life. I'm grateful to have walked part of this path with you these last 25 years. And I look forward to heaven being a place where we can finally sit down and talk to Joseph Smith and ask him those questions that we'd like answered. It'll be a long line, but it'll be a great conversation. Godspeed to you, brother.
All right, anyone else dying? Going once? Going twice? What's that? Dying to get up and talk. Bad joke, Lance. All right. Well, Grant, you're loved. And there's so many more people who have expressed their love to you. There are a few videos that people have recorded. There's one by Dan Vogel. There are a couple other very, very sweet videos that have been recorded. We're going to share those with you. We're not going to take the time to do that tonight because you can watch them later. We also assembled, we received many, many, many emails and comments honoring you. Lots and lots of paper here, full of people expressing their love and gratitude to you. This was pulled together by Amy Grubbs, who helps us out at the Open Stories Foundation as the Director of Operations, and also Lisa, who's been really important to us. But we just wanted to give you this, and in any moment where you're feeling a little bit down or low or not so well or even nostalgic, we hope you'll we hope you'll enjoy reading through just the hundreds and hundreds of people out there who are just so grateful for your contribution. So we're going to leave you at that, and we're going to tell you we again love and honor you, and you deserve all the respect and adoration that's been offered today, plus much, much more. So if you guys don't mind, would you mind standing and joining me with a final thank you to Grant Palmer for all he's done for us. And I'm going to hold you to the months, not weeks, all right? We'll even take some years if we can get them. Thanks again, and thanks to your family. Okay, so before you leave, I want to thank everyone who joined us through Facebook Live on the live stream. It was great to have you. Want to thank again Amy Grubbs and Lisa and Shandy and the Open Stories Foundation for making this possible. Everyone who supports the Open Stories Foundation, this is a result of your support, so thank you. Thanks all of you for coming tonight. It's been wonderful to have you, so many special people here. Can we give Rick and Holly another thank you for being such gracious hosts to us? Thank you guys so much. We love you and are grateful. Before we end, I guess I want to just thank you for joining us on Mormon Stories. It's been a pleasure. Much more good things to come. And so we finish off this episode saying thanks. And we'd like to end with my dear friend Tyler sharing with us one closing song. Would you guys mind if we welcome back Tyler Glenn for a final song?
Let's see here. I don't think I've ever played this one live, so this is exciting. Sunday mornings make me nervous. They don't feel like they used to feel. My religion feels wrong, but I can't tell my mom. I'm afraid that my words would kill. I think I still believe in Jesus. He's a friend when I choose to pray. But my demons get me high till I'm burning all the time. Yeah, they never wash my sins away. Singing I'm singing hymns at the top of my lungs. I'm singing hymns at the top of my lungs. I think the devil made me do it, baby. I found myself when I lost my faith. I found myself when I lost my faith. I think the devil made me do it, now I'm crazy. I found myself when I lost my faith. I found myself when I lost my faith. Yeah, I did, yeah. Yeah, I did, yeah. Sunday service got me anxious. It's a reason why I was depressed. I could see it on their face. I did not deserve His grace, so I skipped the holy sacrament. I think I still believe in something, but I couldn't pray the gay away. So if I'm the wicked one, I'm still my mama's son, and you'll never take that love away. Singing I'm singing hymns at the top of my lungs. I sing my sins at the top of my lungs. I think the devil made me do it, baby. I found myself when I lost my faith. I found myself when I lost my faith. I think the devil made me do it, now I'm crazy. I found myself when I lost my faith. I found myself when I lost my faith. Yeah. I found myself when I lost my faith. I found myself when I lost my faith. Thank you.
Tyler Glenn, everybody. Check out his album, Excommunication. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Grant Palmer. Thanks to his family. We love you guys. Thanks to the Aldens. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Mormon Stories Podcast. To discuss this podcast with others, please check us out at mormonstories.org. To join one of our 80-plus support communities across the globe, click on the Support Communities tab at mormonstories.org. To keep this podcast alive, please consider a tax-deductible donation today by becoming a monthly subscriber at mormonstories.org. Audio and video for this podcast were provided by Richard Holdman. A big thanks to the Saber Rattlers for providing the music for today's episode. The Mormon Stories logo was generously donated by StudioCase.com.
Come, come, ye saints, no toil nor labor fear, but with joy wend your way. Though hard to you this journey may appear, grace shall be as your day. 'Tis better far for us to strive our useless cares from us to drive. Do this and joy, your hearts will swell